Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar, How to Build an Outstanding Geothermal Sales Proposal That Closes the Deal. This event, brought to you by the ACHR News, is sponsored by Climate Master. I'm your moderator, Kyle Gargaro, Editor-in-Chief of the News. Thanks for joining us. Today's expert presenter is Richard Hiles. Richard is the Mid-Central District Region Manager for Climate Master, Inc. He is a 32-year veteran of the heating and air conditioning industry who completed an HVACR course at ITT Technical Institute in 1978. Richard's first 14 years in the industry were in performing service, installation, and sales for residential and light commercial applications. His first geothermal project was a large surface water application called Lloyd's Landing, located in Anderson, Indiana, including professional office buildings and a restaurant that overlooks a lake, which is used for the heat source. The next 6 years, Mr. Hiles was an instructor dedicated to HVACR courses and achieved education supervisor at ITT Technical Institute in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm excited to turn over to today's presenter. Please welcome Richard.
Thank you, Kyle, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Hopefully you can gain some very knowledgeable information out of our presentation today. And as Kyle said, if you had questions, please put them in the Q&A session and we'll review those at the end of today's webinar. As we begin our project, we need to go out and do a site evaluation, do a home comfort survey with your customer like you would normally ask about hot spots and cold spots. And then we're going to ask a few questions to gauge their interest in geothermal and energy savings. We certainly need a manual J heat loss and heat gain, whether this will be a new house construction project, you have a set of blueprints, or we need to measure up the home itself to do this calculation. Our good old 600 square feet per ton isn't going to work when we go to geothermal. We need accurate heating and cooling loads to get precise information back to your customers. Materials needed for our proposal will include a company brochure, our license certificates, some information we can explain the warranty of the system to them, and then some product brochures to help cover benefits and advantages with a geothermal system. We should have a sales presentation, and we want to put together a formal proposal and be able to show economics to our customers. Building our proposal, we'll use some information from a couple of software programs, the first being GeoDesigner. This program will help us calculate our energy comparisons between different systems, whether that's different types of geothermal applications or other conventional heating and cooling systems for comparisons. We'll then take that information along with our install cost and put it into the sales proposal software program, and this will give us some valuable financial information to be able to use to help close the deal with your customer. So we're going to start with this screen, geothermal inputs for the GeoDesigner program. For the example today, I'm going to use a heating load of 78,000, a total cooling load of 32,000, and Madison, Wisconsin for a weather city. In the program, we'll input costs for our utilities. Now, everyone needs to realize when we put in utility cost, we want the actual true delivered cost to the customer. Now, I'm in central Indiana, and if I look at my electric bill, it's 6.8 cents a kilowatt. But when I add in my taxes, delivery fees, and other fees along with it, I come out to about 7.5 cents a kilowatt. So take our utility bill divided by the units of whatever we're talking, cubic feet or kilowatts. That'll give us a true cost for our utility. We then put information on how many people are going to use domestic hot water and start into the program and look at different types of heating and cooling systems we can install, and then we're going to select our geothermal unit. GeoDesigner has a drop-down menu that provides an option to pick any of our geothermal heating and cooling units. Packaged units, indoor or outdoor split units, water-to-water equipment. All of the options for our geothermal equipment is in this program. And then we're going to pick what kind of backup heating system we're going to use. The program does give us different options, whether we want to use electric heat or maybe we're going to do a dual fuel application and we want to use a gas furnace or a boiler for our backup additional or emergency heat operation. Then we'll tell the program we're going to use it for a dual fuel, and instead of just auxiliary heat, we might override the geothermal when we turn on our backup heating system. We'll then input some information about the ground loop system. One of those things we'll want to do is take a quick look at the job site when we're arriving to the customer's home and get an idea, will it fit for a horizontal ground loop, or do you need to consider some type of a vertical or horizontal bore type application. Also, while we're in GeoDesigner, we're going to put in information for our backup water heating source. One of the great benefits with a geothermal system is when the unit's on and operating, we can provide hot water for their domestic potable water. However, during the shoulder seasons, spring and fall, when our unit doesn't run very much, we do need a backup water heating method. We'll then input some more information on the ground loop system, what type of soil that we have at the job site, and this will have some effects more on just the loop design itself, not so much our operating costs that we're concerned with today. So for our example today, I first selected a 4-ton geothermal heat pump system. And it covers the cooling load fine, but I want to be sure I'm covering enough of the heating load that I'm going to get the best operating cost for my customer. In this example with the 4-ton unit on those loads and that weather data, I'm doing 89% of the heating with the geothermal heat pump machine and 11% with the backup heat. I need 915 feet of vertical bore, but I'm going to try the next bigger unit. This unit with the 4-ton is almost $1,600 in operating cost. If we try a larger unit, a 5-ton unit, it does require a little bit more of ground loop associated with it. And I'm now covering 96% of the annual heating requirement with my geothermal unit. I've reduced the operating cost almost $150 compared to the 4-ton unit. That's a significant amount of savings for your customers, and that's really what we're looking for. However, many of us are like Tool Time Tim, and we all want a 6,000 horsepower engine connected onto our little lawnmower for out back. So I'm going to try the next bigger unit and see what happens here. If we go to the 6-ton unit, I'm now doing 98% of the annual heating requirement with my Geo unit and only 2% by the backup electric heat. However, when I look at the operating cost, I'm back up to almost $1,600 like I was with that 4-ton unit using a lot of backup auxiliary electric heat. So in this case, the 5-ton unit actually becomes the correct selection for these building loads and weather data. So throughout our example today, we will use the 5-ton unit as the correct unit selected. In surveys that we have conducted with consumers that bought geothermal heating and cooling systems, the number one reason why they bought that system was lower heating and cooling bills. So contractors and salespeople out there, for you to be successful with geothermal, you will need to show your customers heating and cooling operating cost and the benefits geothermal provides compared to other type systems. What did surprise me when we did the survey was that the number 2 reason why people bought geothermal heating and cooling was the price of the system. For you experienced geothermal folks, we've heard over years that the price of the system is too high. And what we've learned is if we present this system properly and show the economics to our customers, the price of the system really is not an objection, and they're more than willing to pay the price to get a good installation of a geothermal system. The number 3 reason people are buying geothermal is the green product environment concerns. Something we'll talk a little bit about today as we go forward, how we affect the environment with geothermal. And then tax credit does come into play for some people. So, as we're going to have a successful sales process, we need to show them heating and cooling operating cost. This shows our comparison of a 93% condensing 2-stage variable speed gas furnace with a 15-SEER air conditioner, a 15-SEER air source heat pump, and the Tranquility 5-ton unit for total operating cost. We show them the total cost and then we break it down into 12 equal monthly payments. The geothermal system saves $67 a month versus our gas furnace, and it saves $102 a month versus the air source heat pump. In our example today, I'm using $1 per cubic foot for natural gas and 8 cents per kilowatt for electricity. You'll adjust this for your market area and the rates that you have in your area to see the similar comparisons and should see similar operating cost savings. Now this will excite many customers and are going to want to know more about geothermal, so we'll have to take a few more steps to get them some more information and take them down the right path. But before we go to sales proposal and put in our operating cost, we need to go to another website, a website called desireusa.org. And if you look at the way that's spelled, it's not quite desire. Write this one down, DSIREUSA.org. You can click on your state. You'll be able to pick up all the federal incentives, any state incentives that are available, any rebate programs that are going on with local utility companies. In the last couple of years, we have really seen the electric utility companies embrace geothermal again. They see the advantages to help reduce their peak loads and give their customers great heating and cooling systems, so many of those have rebate programs out there. Some states may even have property tax exemptions with geothermal installations. So go to desireusa.org and see all the incentives that are available to offer to your customers. Then we'll start into the Climate Master Sales Proposal Program. This is a free Excel program for all contractors. We'll start with this program and put in some basic information, your dealer information, customer or consumer information, contact name and phone number. We'll put in our installed cost for the geothermal system. For today's example, our 5-ton unit, I'm assuming we can install this for $24,500. I'm going to click on the ductwork included in the price. So in this first example, we're going to look at this project as a new house under construction that's eligible for the tax credit. We're going to provide the extended warranty and a couple of little notes on there. So this will be done first as a new house construction. Then we're going to put in some information about our loan rate and fossil fuel rates. We're going to show the customer for a 20-year period what their payments will be with the various heating and cooling options that you make available to them. In our example, I'm going to use a 2% per year inflation rate for electricity and 4% for fossil fuel rates. I'm going to use 5% on the current loan rate. For a 30-year mortgage, I think it can be below 4% on an interest rate currently, but we'll use that for our example today. Assume the customer is going to put 10% down and they're going to borrow 90% for the loan, and they're going to put that onto the mortgage for 30 years. You can adjust that as needed if the customer has different plans. We'll list the number of units that we're going to install. For this example, it's our TTV-064, the 5-ton unit. We can put some notes on the front of this proposal if we want to. And then I'm going to do a comparison for 20 years and show them a total cash saved over that 20-year period. We can pick what kind of system we want to do that comparison with. Again, our consumers want to see, sorry there, we skipped a couple of slides. Let me set us back up. Okay, our next input's into the sales proposal program. Some of the information that we get from GeoDesigner, our set points, what our loop temperatures are going to be, and then we start to input the operating cost for the geothermal heating and cooling system and our air source heat pump. For our example today, I'm assuming that 5-ton 15-SEER air source heat pump will be installed, ductwork and everything, for $9,250. And we'll input information for the gas furnace AC system. I'm assuming that will be installed for $9,550, natural gas backup water heater also. Now we're ready to view some information from the sales proposal program that will help you with your customer. However, at the job site, at the homeowner's house, we're going to ask a few questions and kind of gauge interest into, are they willing to consider a geothermal system? Will they see the advantages and benefits and be ready to make the right choice? So as you start with your home comfort survey or what assessment questions that you do, this is very key with the homeowner, that you actually write down and listen to them and have a conversation about their heating and cooling system, like what would you like to see improved in your current system, and what would you like to keep about your current system? Maybe there are some things that they're satisfied and happy with. Would you like to reduce indoor-outdoor system noise? By using our ECM2 fan motor, we will reduce that indoor air velocity noise we hear with some systems. And by going with geothermal, you can completely eliminate any outdoor system noise since we bury the condenser in the ground. Are there uncomfortable temperature swings or drafts in the house? Geothermal systems don't blast out 125-degree gas-type heat, so we do run a little bit longer. However, that makes for a more even temperature throughout the building, whether it's a two-story or a long ranch. And is there excessive humidity in the summertime? By using our two-stage scroll compressors, we'll be able to do better dehumidification in the summertime by running at part load conditions, and that also helps to save much more energy. And speaking of energy, these are some of the key questions we do want to ask a consumer. How much do you spend to heat and cool your home in a year? It is surprising how many consumers will have no idea how much it is. They just pay their regular utility bills and go on about their business. However, if they do have them, that'll help justify the comparison that you show in GeoDesigner for the various systems. How important is saving money on monthly utility bills? This certainly should be high on everybody's list for what they want in a new system. Budgets are tight and everybody's looking to save money on their home total bills. How important is return on investment with the new system? This will be one of the things we use in a closing questions about return on investment. So we should get a very positive response from the consumer on this. Is the environmental friendliness of the system important, and is it a concern to you? Many people are concerned what we do with the environment and the impact they have by the way they live their lifestyle. Dealer assessment questions here, number 3, how important is owning a comfort system that will last a long time? Certainly we will want a system that has a long life cycle to it. We'll explain that to a customer later in slides. How important is it to not worry about repair bills after the standard warranty is over? Part of the advantage of giving them the full 10-year parts and labor warranty program, so they have peace of mind and comfort of assurance that you'll take care of the system. While at the job site, take some time and determine where and what type of loop system we're going to do with our installation. If this is not an open loop well water pump and dump groundwater system, we need to work with the consumer how we get access to the job site, where we are going to locate the loop, and then go through and locate utilities and other things like that, just as we make sure we get this lined up. And many contractors actually have the homeowner sign that they're agreeing to what we're doing with that ground loop system. Okay, time for our sales presentation to the customer. Some contractors like to use a flip book type presentation, and what I see with a lot of the younger guys, they like an electronic version or a PowerPoint type. What I do recommend is we certainly don't walk in with just our proposal, here's my price, here's my business card, and call me. If we want to be successful with geothermal heating and cooling systems, we need to do a presentation for the consumer. And certainly the first thing we want to do is sell your company, the benefits that you offer, and what you bring to the game that makes you stand out compared to the next contractor coming in to give them a price. One of the things we do know with geothermal consumers, they will probably get 3 prices for their system before they make a choice. So point out that you have your ICSPA and manufacturer certifications, that you're a qualified geothermal contractor. Pictures do a great job, and any case studies or testimonials that help show you as a good quality geothermal contractor will stand out. Certainly, if you can have any references from past satisfied customers that they could actually call and talk to, someone that might be willing to share their energy savings and that information helps strengthen you as a good quality contractor and a person that they want to do business with for their installation. Well, we used to use a sales process of good, better, and best. However, consumers have changed now, and we need to be aware of this as we make our presentation. More consumers look for and purchase green-type products. Almost 25% said that paying a higher premium for buying green is acceptable. 60% of consumers say that they use energy-efficient appliances, and 95% say they will in the future. Consumers are willing to buy green products. So as we go forward, our presentation on products should go best, better, and then good. Just like if you go to a car lot to buy an automobile, they're not going to show you the lowest car to start with, and they're also not going to throw out their high price on the automobile they want you to purchase to start with. They'll show you features and benefits of why. So as we start our sales approach method, we want to show our monthly and our total investment, and we want to start with our platinum or our best system choice. Now, I'm all geothermal, so my best system choice would be a packaged geothermal heat pump system with a water-to-water unit that could do on-demand domestic water heating. That would be my premium platinum choice. The gold choice or better choice could be that packaged geothermal heat pump system with the hot water generator feature to produce about 50% of their annual domestic water heating needs. And our silver or good system choice could be a split unit, a split geothermal system with a gas furnace for a dual fuel heating and cooling system. Now, some people like to present that type of method. Some people like to use something like the tip of the iceberg type proposal. What the customer sees. List out the items they actually get, the equipment, the thermostat, the loop, and those kind of things. And then list items on the bottom of the iceberg, the things they don't see. All those other high-quality features and benefits that you and your installation crew will do and provide, the things that they don't really see but they need to be aware of that helps you stand out as the top-quality geothermal contractor. So we want to tell the customer something about geothermal. We want to educate them a little bit what this type of system is. I actually found a Life magazine article from October of 1948, one of the early installations in the United States of a geothermal heating and cooling system. And then down right bottom of the picture you can see it took about 8 or 10 guys to put a loop in back then, which now we can do with a couple of guys out there in a day's time. They called it a fireless furnace. It's a geothermal heat pump system. Geothermal heat pumps actually go back to a 1912 Swiss patent. So this technology has been around for 100 years now. More people have heard of it. More people are aware of it now. So they may have already done some internet research and be aware of what geothermal heating and cooling systems are. But we want to explain to them the basic concept. It is a renewable energy. We use about 1 kilowatt of electricity from the power grid to operate the machine, the blower motor, the compressor, and the circulator pump for the ground loop system. And we typically extract about 4 kilowatts worth of energy out of the ground. Free energy under our feet that we don't have to pay to tap into. And we deliver about 5 kilowatts of energy into the house. When we look at this as efficiencies, 1 unit of energy from the grid, 3 to 5 units of energy from the ground, we get 4 to 6 units of energy into the building. That makes this system 400 to 600% efficient. Astronomical. We're going to go to an EPA statement from 1993 when they told us that geothermal heat pump systems are the most energy efficient, cost-effective space conditioning system. They also produce the lowest carbon dioxide emissions, and they're the most effective way for us to reduce energy consumption for our building stock. From Heat Spring Learning Institute, Chris Williams tells us there will be some concerns from your consumers about geothermal. Number one is typically price. Again, when we present the financials, they'll understand the benefits of geothermal. I'm going to advise that we don't just pull up in the driveway, talk to the customer for a couple of minutes. It's $25,000. Here's my bid. Here's my card. No, we really want to take the time and do a good presentation. We're going to want to show the consumer return on investment. program will also show us payback, but we want to focus on return on investment, or total monthly payment if we're looking at a new house construction. We need to show the consumer this is a proven technology. You can get case studies from our website, from the GHPC, the IXPA organization, or build your own case studies and spotlights. How does this technology compare to other options to consider? Well, in our best, better, good example, I showed 3 types of geothermal systems. However, we could do comparisons with conventional heating, cooling, and systems also, and show them the benefits with geothermal. And then number 5 from Chris is dealer support and service. Certainly the customer is going to buy from you because of the superior support you provide, the quality installation, and service after the fact if needed. We need to make sure the customer understands the quality of you as a contractor. So today I've put together 10 questions that I feel we want to go through and ask the customer that's going to help them make the decision to purchase a geothermal system from you. Question number 10. Would you be interested in a heating and cooling system that provides the lowest maintenance cost? Now, I would ask this during my general assessment questions as we're going around the house, and then we can show them in sales proposal the ASHRAE report 382-RP that shows typical square foot for maintenance for different heating and cooling systems. The geothermal system at 24 cents a square foot and conventional systems 27, 28, 29 cents a square foot. So there is an advantage for a geothermal heating and cooling system. Question number 10, I would ask the consumer. Would you be interested in a heating and cooling system that also provides the energy to do 40 to 60% of your annual domestic water heating? Or would you like a full 100% on-demand water heating system along with your heating and cooling unit? I'm not aware of any other heating and cooling system that can also provide domestic water heating while it's operating. So in our example of the 5-ton unit, I looked at how much hot water is generated from the hot water generator desuperheater feature of our geothermal unit, and it was 54% of the annual requirement. When we look at just the water heating cost for the various systems, the geothermal system has the lowest total water heating cost, particularly compared to our all-electric air source heat pump system at $574 per year. So there is a big benefit for geothermal heat pump system. Question number 8 refers to safety. If you could have a heating and cooling system that required no gas lines or flue pipes, would you be interested in knowing more? Many consumers are concerned about the safety in their house, and I have some contractors actually take this to the next level, and they ask this question. If you could have a heating and cooling system that provided the benefit of no possibility of carbon monoxide poisoning or delayed ignition, would you be interested? If you've ever had a consumer that's had an explosion from a gas furnace or carbon monoxide poisoning, they will consider that as part of their safety. Now, as I make these 2 questions, I'm sure I have several people in the audience that are saying, Richard, we do a lot of dual fuel systems. I have customers with 3 to 8-year-old gas furnaces that want geothermal heating and cooling systems, and we do split systems. So for a dual fuel split system application, I would use this question instead. And when we check this in the input on the sales proposal, it'll change the benefits for number 7. If you could have a heating and cooling system that provided the benefit of using a geothermal heating system during normal operation and the ability to use a conventional system during extreme conditions, would you be interested? So again, in many applications, that may be the correct answer for the consumers. Still save energy with the geothermal system and have a backup conventional type system. Question number 7, life expectancy. This should excite almost any consumer that we talk with. Would you be interested in a heating and cooling system that provides the longest life expectancy? In the sales proposal program, we show another ASHRAE report. This is report TC 1.8 that shows, and this is for commercial systems, the average life of different heating and cooling equipment. Geothermal is 20 plus years. Fossil fuel furnaces, 18 years. Air source heat pumps or air conditioners have a life expectancy of 15 years. When I was at Greenbuild in Chicago in 2010, I grabbed the latest ASHRAE manual, and they had geothermal heating cooling systems at 24 years. In the opening, Kyle mentioned that my first geothermal project was in my hometown of Anderson, Indiana. In 1979, I piped in 16 geothermal heat pumps, and we did a lake application. The local contractor that has that maintenance agreement tells me 2 of those original units are still installed, and one of them actually still has the original compressor from 1979. So they do last a lot longer than conventional systems, and this should be important to our consumer. And if that unit is replaced in 20 plus years, we're going to reuse that loop again. There are systems that have been out here that long. We are replacing the equipment and typically can reuse the loop. So important when we do the installation that we do a as-built drawing and record information on the loop when you try and reuse it in 20 years. The pipe gets a 50, 55-year no-leak warranty, and we've sent it out and had stress tests done. They know the pipe will last more than 100 years, but they can't perform stress tests beyond 100 years. So we may replace that piece of equipment several times and still use the first original loop. Question number 6, energy independence. Are you concerned about how much energy we import? If you could help improve our nation's energy independence, would you be interested as a consumer? We like to show them some information about energy consumption throughout the United States. From the Energy Information Administration, we see that about 40% of the energy produced in the United States is used in residential and commercial buildings. And part of the biggest loads in those buildings are the thermal loads. Almost 18% of the energy produced is used in heating, cooling, and water heating, exactly what's addressed with a geothermal heat pump system. And those systems also produce about 20% of the carbon emissions in the United States. Buildings as a whole produce about 43% of our carbon emissions. We use 71% of the U.S. electricity and about 53% of the natural gas that's in the United States. We also want to be aware of how much oil we import. Currently, we're importing about 18 million barrels of oil a day, and it costs the United States $1.3 billion daily at $75 a barrel. That's astronomical. So, a typical geothermal installation will reduce energy costs 25 to 60%, depending on local fuel cost and what type of fuel will be available at our job site. Now, one thing I want to be sure that we point out to the consumers, we're going to reduce their heating, cooling, and water heating 25 to 60%. Too many times a consumer gets the impression we're going to reduce their entire energy bill by 60%. We need to make sure they understand we're addressing heating, cooling, and water heating. So in our example, or here we are, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint. Question number 5, if we could reduce the carbon footprint 6 to 12 metric tons, would you be interested in knowing more? Now, some consumers will not be interested and not concerned, but many of them are. As we saw in the survey, over 15% are concerned about our green impacts. And they'll have some idea maybe what their carbon footprint is. If you're not aware, carbon cap and trade is getting started. It's already in Australia. The European Union is doing it, and before Governor Schwarzenegger left office in California, they passed a bill out there. California started a cap and trade program. It was to start in 2012. They gave them a 1-year reprieve to make sure they get everything lined up and everything organized right. And this will start in 2013, and it will sweep across the United States down the road. Mainly this will be to the electric utility companies. They're the major greenhouse gas producers. So we have a big benefit with a geothermal heating and cooling system. If we look at a baseline house, and I'm going to look in the Chicago market, this first area here for the baseline house, it would emit 17 tons of carbon. Now, as contractors, we tend to think a ton is either 2,000 pounds or 12,000 BTUs capacity. When we talk about carbon emissions, we're talking about a volume of gas, 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. A cubic volume is 1 cubic metric yard, and that's a ton. If we did that with an air source heat pump, we would use more electricity, and our CO2 goes up to 21 tons. With a natural gas house, it's at 15 tons. If I look at the house in Chicago with a geothermal heating and cooling system, it's only 8.6 tons, half of what the baseline house is. So one of the statements we use in the geothermal industry, installing a single geothermal heat pump system will reduce greenhouse gas equivalent to taking 2 cars off the road, which is equal to 6 to 10 tons of carbon as a reduction. And with many consumers, this will hit home, and this will excite them to want to move into buying the geothermal heating and cooling system. However, most of us really want to see those big financial benefits. Let's face it, everybody's budgets are pretty tight right now, and if we can show them a big savings on their monthly budget, they'll be more interested in your geothermal heating and cooling system. So be prepared to handle some objections on what we're trying to offer to the customer. One of our key important questions should be, if you could have a heating and cooling system that saved you 25 to 60% in annual energy cost, would you purchase that system today? Well, in our example today, we have a monthly savings of $67 over a condensing gas furnace and $102 a month over an air source heat pump. That equates to 36% less than the gas AC system for geothermal and 45% energy savings over the air source heat pump. That should be high enough to motivate your customers to want to hear more from you about geothermal heating and cooling. And once we get to that price point and start to discuss price, we're probably going to have that objection that geothermal heating and cooling costs too much. We need to show the financial benefits and how much they're going to save, what their total payments will be, explain the high quality installation that you're going to do for them, and I wouldn't go to the cheaper price scenario. I would justify why it's worth that price, and we'll see that here in the next few slides. So we're going to look at our example as if this was a new house purchase. We're going to roll the cost of the equipment in with the 30-year mortgage on the home. Your key question for the consumer would be, if you can have a heating and cooling system that provides a positive cash flow from your first month's utility bill, would you purchase today? Positive cash flow. When we want to assess new house construction, we need to look at the total cost of ownership. And I'm not talking a full life cycle cost analysis like an engineering firm will do on a commercial building, but this is really good for a residential homeowner. We need to include our utility cost, plus our monthly mortgage payment, plus our maintenance cost. That's our real cost for a heating and cooling system, not just the upfront cost of the equipment. We need to look at our total monthly payment. So for our GeoDesigner and sales proposal example, I'm using install cost of $24,500 for Geo, $9,250 for the air source heat pump, and since we have a flue to deal with on the gas furnace, I did that at $9,550. We have included the 30% tax credit in the calculations, and it's a 5% loan rate for a 30-year mortgage. Now we show the customer the true cost of owning the equipment, what our fuel cost is for the various systems, the extra cost to own a geothermal heating and cooling systems, and show our total monthly payment. So your closing question with the consumer would be, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, what monthly payment would you like to have? I can install that ClimateMaster geothermal heating and cooling system for $185 a month, the air source heat pump for $257 a month, or the gas furnace for $223 a month. Which payment would you like to have? Give the consumer some time to think it over, and they should come to the realization they want the ClimateMaster geothermal system. If not, let's show them what our total savings per month is going to be. $72 per month against the air source heat pump, $38 a month against the gas furnace. Or I have a few contractors that actually are a little bold and use this method. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I can install any one of these 3 heating and cooling systems for you. However, if you choose to pick the gas furnace, it's going to cost you an additional $38 a month. Or if you pick the air source heat pump, it's going to cost you an additional $72 a month. And that's evaluating the system looking on the first year's payments. If we actually look at 20 years down the road how much we're going to pay, that's an additional $158 a month for the air source heat pump, or an additional $231 a month for the gas furnace. I'm pretty sure most all your customers will want to buy that geothermal heating and cooling system. And we can also show them that over a 20-year period, they have saved in excess of $20,000 with your geothermal heating and cooling system. This comes from the sales proposal program, what we call the Cash Flow Plus. A little extra icing on top of the cake for the customer to realize that they've made a good choice with the geothermal system. Now, that was if it was a new house. We have seen more geothermal systems now go into retrofit type applications. Consumers are staying in the house, they're trying to figure out how to save on their monthly budget, and energy is a big part of that. So, this would be my first question towards a closing process for a retrofit job. If you were to make a financial investment, what would you desire for a return on investment of your money? Now, when we look at a retrofit job, it's good to use return on investment. Consumers understand this type of a percentage. What's the interest rate on their credit cards? What's an interest rate on their financing on their automobile or on their house itself? So they're already familiar and used to seeing percentages for a return on investment or other things. Late last year, November, I went out on the internet and I looked to see what other investments I could do and what kind of return I could get. A 60-month CD had a 1.3% return on investment. Then I went to the T. Rowe Price site and looked at a money market account and a couple other investments that could be made there. Currently was under 2% rate of return. If I looked at a full-term average since the funds were started, 2 and 3% rate of return. Really not very huge. So our next question with the consumer would be, if you could have a heating and cooling system that provides a return on investment above the level that you could go take your money and invest in other things, would you purchase from me today? It's good for the consumer, get some ideas from them, what they think a good rate of return would be to invest their money in. Return on investment. Return on investment is calculated by dividing our annual energy savings by the incremental cost difference of the various heating and cooling options that we provide. It's shown as a percentage, so consumers are more familiar looking at a percentage. For our example today, if we did this with a 5-ton unit as a retrofit, our install cost for the unit, I put in $18,750 and $5,250 for the air source heat pump. Once we take the tax credit out, our actual finance system price that we're going to look at today is $13,125, 8.8% for our loan rate, and I did both systems at a 5-year. So we did a short-term loan for 5 years with various systems, and now we're going to show the consumer the results. For the alternative system to be a better buy, you would have to invest this additional money spent on the Climate Master system at an equivalent rate of return of 21% for the air source heat pump, 19% for the gas furnace. My closing question with the consumer at this point would be, where could you go invest this additional money and get a rate of return higher than what we're showing today? Certainly they won't be able to go do that in today's economy or even as the economy does recover. So they're better to invest their money into a geothermal heating and cooling system better than any other financial investment that they could make. And at this point, we need to have financing available. Most people aren't going to have $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 ready to go make this financial investment. We're partnered with the GeoSmart organization, Electric Gas Industries Association, for financing for our Climate Master contractors. We need to have the financing available and ready once the consumer has made their decision, they're ready to purchase a geothermal heating and cooling system from you. This could be the difference between success and failure on the site. So I plugged in our information for this loan of a little over $13,000, 8.8%, and a 5-year loan. Payment came out to $271. Some consumers may have an objection and feel that that's too high of an investment. So what we should look at is what their real net monthly payment is going to be. I went back to GeoDesigner and I input a 70% gas furnace or an 8-SEER air source heat pump. Figuring if we were at a replacement job site, it's probably been in 15, 20 years, and that's the typical efficiencies we would see. When I do comparisons, I see that the consumer energy savings is over $130 a month. That's $130 a month they're paying to the utility company that they should be paying to themselves. So when we look at the net monthly payment, that's only $140 a month, $35 a week, and consumers will be able to see that as a big advantage and can afford $140 a month for 5 years. That should convince the consumer they want to make a purchase of the geothermal system from you, and we can show them our cash flow plus analysis for the retrofit project that they've still saved over $19,000 over a 20-year period. And realizing that cash flow plus for either example, we're not putting in a replacement cost of the conventional systems at year 15 or year 18, or the numbers would be even higher. One of the other benefits with geothermal that's currently going on is the federal tax credits. As an old veteran in the industry, I don't want to use this as a tool to help close the job, but we do need to make the consumer aware of the federal tax credits, that it's 30% of the total installation. It can be combined with wind and solar credits. Let's say we were to do a big system installation. It was $30,000. Your customer would have a $9,000 tax credit. If they were to do taxes for next year and they only had a $5,000 liability, they would have $4,000 left over to use in the following year. All systems must be installed, started, and commissioned before the end of 2016. It must be located in the United States and be an Energy Star rated geothermal heat pump unit. It does not have to be their main home. It could be their getaway lake cottage. It could be their condo down in the Gulf Coast. It could be all three. However, it cannot be a rental property. Rental property is considered a commercial property, and that qualifies for the 10% tax credit and accelerated depreciation. If you do some commercial work, let us know. We can help you go through tax credits for commercial, or go to our website, cmdealernet.com. You can download the 2 free software programs we have talked about today, and you can download our tax credit guide for residential or commercial systems. That's at cmdealernet.com, a free website for geothermal heating and cooling contractors. So the number one question that I would have for the consumer is, when will you start saving energy with a geothermal heating and cooling water heating system? The sooner you get the installation started, the sooner they start saving money on their energy bills. And again, we can always show them how much they're already paying the utility company that they should be putting into their own investment of their heating and cooling system. So I want to thank everybody for attending the webinar today, and we'll pass the slideshow back over to Kyle, and if we have some questions today, we'll cover those questions with you. Much success to everyone and your geothermal efforts out there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Richard, for a great presentation. We'll have Richard address some of the questions we have in our time left. Keep in mind that you can keep on submitting them, and we'll get to as many as we can. First one up. Does the efficiency and cost of operation include the power required to run circulating pumps?
That is a great question, Kyle, whoever the author of that one was. In the energy analysis, yes, we do look at a closed-loop geothermal system has a general standard pumping penalty or so many watts for pumping that is included into our energy calculations. It's slightly different if it's an open loop well water project because we're actually lifting water up out of the ground. But yes, we do include some cost for pumping watts on that side of the system. We will see a new unit come out from ClimateMaster. It's available now actually that has a variable speed loop pump in it. One of the things we look at for energy savings, not only the heating and cooling part of the building, the efficiency of the system, but being able to do a variable speed pump on a residential unit will have enhanced energy savings. That's our new TZ product, Tranquility 22 product out in the industry.
All right, great. Here's another interesting question. How do you respond when the customer mentions payback?
If a consumer is really interested in seeing payback, that will actually also be generated in the sales proposal program. I do believe that some commercial customers will understand payback. If it pays for itself in 5 to 8 years and they understand the life of the system is over 20 years, they see they're going to save over that remainder of that period. Some residential consumers understand it and some don't, but if they want the information, certainly it is available for them and we wouldn't want to hide anything from them on payback. However, they really should look at it as return on investment, an actual percentage rate that would be similar to what they could go invest in out into the marketplace, and that's where they'll see the huge benefit of the geothermal system.
Alrighty. This one's from Craig Laws. When did you obtain the data for the soil conditions?
How and when did we obtain the data for soil? If we're going to do vertical boring, every time a contractor drills a hole into the ground, they must do a bore log, whether it's a water well or if it's going to be a geothermal ground well, and your local state agencies will have that soil condition available. Now, the local loop contractors will be able to tell you if it's a damp soil, it's sandy, it's clay, or what type of soil, and we'll get used to a certain area. For a default, I would use a damp soil condition, either sand and gravel or clay, and that's fine for us to do general numbers. But when we do the actual design, yes, we need to know the soil at the site, so we make sure we get enough ground loop installed with the system that we get the proper heat transfer and good operation of the heating cooling system. As the geothermal industry is growing, guys, I just can't stress how important it is we get good quality installations, that we keep growing like we are.
This one is from Chandler Purnell. Is the software, i.e. GeoDesigner, available for the iPad?
Wow, Chandler, that's a great question. Is GeoDesigner available for iPad? Unfortunately, at this time, the program is a Microsoft-based program. I don't have an Apple-based program. However, you could take that device, go to our CM DealerNet website, click on the energy calculator on there. There is a web-based program that you can put in some basic information about the homeowner's site, square footage, location, and it'll generate a basic operating cost savings if you want to use that in your presentation method. But no, I haven't convinced them yet for a Mac version, gang.
Alrighty. This one's from Mark Hepner. What's the thought process in not using the federal tax credit program, as part of the closing process?
Interesting question, Mark, and I know that's a great thing that happened for us to have that tax benefit available. And hopefully it goes on beyond 2016. We have the GEO organization out in Washington that is doing lobbying and keeping it there for us. This is my personal opinion. I just don't like to be the guy that's got the gimmick and using that tax credit to help close the sale, because the contractor that comes in behind you, he has that same benefit. He has that same 30% tax credit. So if you can sell the services that you offer, why your installation is going to be better, how you got to the lower operating cost, and the other things, that helps differentiate you as the standout contractor that the homeowner wants to do business with. But yes, do make them aware that it is available and it will apply, plus any other incentives that are available in your local area.
Okay. Here's another good question. How do you motivate a customer to purchase that wants to think about it for a while?
And we will run into that question with consumers. They see the benefits, they want to do geothermal, but they just want to think about it a little while. Well, the first thing I like to do is confirm with the consumer that they're making a very important decision. The heating and cooling system is one of the most important mechanicals in their home along with the electrical and the plumbing. However, I like for them to see how much money they're actually losing every month by not going ahead and making the decision. So we do GeoDesigner, we look at the current system that's installed, compare it to the geothermal system that you're offering, and show them how much they're losing every month by not going ahead and purchasing the geothermal system, which in our example today, that was $130 a month that's going to the utility company that should go to their payment for their new heating and cooling system.
All right. This one's from Thomas Schertzer, sounds like. This is referring back to an earlier slide that said 21% of the people did it based on the price of the system. His question is, what was the average installation cost that you used to receive that number? I don't know if you know that or not.
Well, that's a very interesting question. We actually use an agency that handles and takes care of leads for us. We had them go back and survey people. So it wasn't necessarily install cost in a certain market area. This was a survey that was done throughout the United States on people that had purchased equipment. So certainly different market areas will have different install costs, and that's mainly the cost of the ground loop system to get that installed with it. So don't really have a set number that was used, but it was people that made actual purchases of the geothermal systems.
Okay. And it looks like we have time for one more question. This is, how do I establish that geothermal is a proven technology?
Interesting question. How do we do this? There are multiple ways that we can establish this as a proven technology. There are case studies that are available. The CM DealerNet website has a couple of case studies. The Geothermal Heat Pump Consortium, their website is GHPC.org, or the IXPA website, or we can do a Google search and pick up information about geothermal that shows that it's been installed for long periods of time, or I'll be more than happy to share a few of the slides that we use today that shows early installations in the United States start in the 1940s, became more popular in the 60s and 70s, and once we got plastic pipe, it really took off. And there is some information about the actual Swiss patent that started in 1912. So yes, we do want to establish with the consumers this technology has been around, it's proven, and it works well.
Okay, great information. This concludes today's webinar, so please join me in thanking Richard for his excellent presentation, as well as our sponsor, Climate Master.